All right, we're about to dive into a single massive idea from the neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky. And I gotta warn you, it could completely flip how you see, well, everything. We're tackling one of the oldest questions there is. Do you really have free will? So let's start with right now. You think you just chose to watch this, right? But what if I told you that click was just the very last domino to fall in a chain reaction that started way, way before you were even born? What if your decision was, in a very real sense, already made for you? Okay, here's the bombshell, the central thesis from Sapolsky. Free will does not exist. He argues that our feeling of being in control, that little voice in our head that says, I choose this, is really just a story our brain makes up after the fact. It's a narrator trying to make sense of actions that were already in motion. To really get this, we're going to have to become detectives. We're going to investigate one of our own decisions. And our investigation starts just 1 single second before we do anything at all. So a while back, some wild experiments by a scientist named Benjamin Libet found something that still just blows people's minds. He discovered that if you decide to do something simple, like, say, lift your finger, the part of your brain that controls that movement lights up before you're even aware you've decided to do it. Let that sink in. Your brain acts first, and then, a split second later, you feel like you made the choice. This gives us a whole new way to think about consciousness. It's not the CEO up in the corner office making all the big calls. Nope. It's more like a sports commentator in the booth, watching the game unfold and then confidently telling us why the quarterback just threw that pass, even though the play was called long ago. It's explaining, not deciding. Okay, so let's rewind the tape a little further. Let's go back to the minutes and hours before a decision is made. Because, your brain isn't just floating in a void, it's being constantly poked and prodded by the world around it. There's this thing called the priming effect, and it's happening to you all the time. For instance, studies have actually shown that if you're holding a warm cup of coffee, you're way more likely to describe a total stranger as having a warm and friendly personality. You don't know what's happening, but these little invisible cues are constantly shaping your choices. Now, check out this number. 65%. On its own, it means absolutely nothing. But this number comes from a study about a decision that can literally change someone's entire life. And what it shows us about free will? Well, it's pretty disturbing. That 65%, that was the parole approval rate for judges who had just gotten back from their lunch break. But right before the break, when those same judges were hungry, when their blood sugar was low, the approval rate dropped to almost 0. Think about that. A person's freedom depended less on the facts of their case and more on whether the judge had eaten a sandwich. So where's the free will in that decision? All right, now we have to go way, way back. I'm talking years, decades, even generations, to see how the actual machine that's making these decisions, your brain, was built in the first place. I mean, just think about it for a second. The hormones that are swimming around in your system right now, the way your brain was wired during those crazy teenage years, the trauma or the love you got as a kid, the stress your mom was under when you were in the womb, and the literal genes you inherited. You didn't choose a single one of those things. And yet, they are the absolute foundation of every single choice you will ever make. So you see, every action, every decision, is just the very last link in a huge, unbreakable chain of cause and effect. A chain that goes from that immediate cue in your environment, back through your hormone levels, back through your childhood, all the way to the culture your great-grandparents lived in, and even the evolutionary pressures that shaped our entire species. And this brings us to the million-dollar question. If you trace that chain back for any decision you've ever made, where is that one magical moment where a you that's separate from all your biology, all your history, all your programming, just stepped in and made a choice completely free from everything that came before it? According to Sapolsky, that moment just doesn't exist. Now, I can practically hear you yelling at the screen right now. The biggest, most powerful objection to all of this is, okay, that's a nice theory, but I feel free. I feel myself making choices every single second of the day. And Sapolsky has a really powerful comeback for this. He says, look, a feeling isn't evidence of reality. Someone who's had an arm amputated can feel a phantom itch so intensely that it drives them crazy. The feeling is 100% real, but the hand isn't there. He argues that the feeling of free will is maybe the most convincing phantom limb that all of us share. People also like to bring up stuff like chaos theory, saying the brain is just too complex to predict. But here's the thing, unpredictable is not the same thing as undetermined. A pinball machine is completely unpredictable. You have no idea where the ball will go. But that ball is always, always following the basic laws of physics. It isn't choosing to go left or right. Our brains, they're just an insanely complex pinball machine. So, if we actually accept this, what happens then? Does life just become meaningless? Do we all just throw our hands up and give up? Well, Sapolsky argues for the exact opposite. He thinks that letting go of this illusion could actually be liberating and could lead to a much more compassionate, humane world. Let's just look at how things could shift. Our whole idea of justice could change from revenge to prevention, right? You wouldn't punish a car with faulty brakes, you'd fix it or get it off the road. Success becomes less about arrogance, I earned this, and more about a deep sense of gratitude, I was so fortunate. And maybe most importantly, our judgment of other people could be replaced by a simple, compassionate question. What happened to you? But what about praise? What about greatness? Can we still admire Michael Jordan? Of course. We admire a gorgeous sunset, right? The sunset didn't choose to be beautiful, it's just the result of atmospheric physics. In the same way, we can stand in awe of Michael Jordan as this magnificent outcome of a biological and environmental lottery without needing him to have magically chosen to be great. And let's be super, super clear on this. This does not mean we just let dangerous criminals run around. Not at all. It just means our reason for locking them up changes. The goal is no longer to make them suffer because they deserve it. The goal becomes to quarantine them, to protect society, the same way we would quarantine someone with a highly contagious, dangerous virus. It's about public safety, not revenge. Now, living this way is profoundly difficult. I mean, Sapolsky is the first to admit that even though he believes this 100% with his intellect, he can't fully shake the feeling of free will. He still gets mad. He still feels pride. The point isn't to become some kind of perfect logical robot overnight. The real goal is just progress. It's just to try. So here's the challenge in the real world. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, your gut reaction is going to be anger. But just for 1 second, can you try to wonder? Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they just had the worst day of their life. Maybe their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. If you can take that hot flash of anger and just reduce it by, say, 10%, that's a win. That's a victory. And this all brings us to this final, really beautiful paradox. If it's true, if our minds really are determined, then the very act of wrestling with these ideas, of thinking about them, of learning, of trying to see the world differently, that might be the closest thing to freedom we can ever really experience.